On today's podcast, we're talking about adopting the mindset as leaders, teams, and organizations for cultural fitness. Not just hiring for quote-unquote cultural fit, but the most effective cultures are attracting, retaining, and developing talent that adds to their culture and a commitment to keep working on their cultural fitness beyond just their cultural fit. I'll explain more.
Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world.
Hey everybody, it's Jason and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. Wherever you are and however you're coming to the podcast today, welcome back. So glad you are here. It is hard to believe we're in season 7 already, nearly 200 episodes on the podcast. So thank you to everybody who's been a loyal listener. If you are one of the folks that have been with us from the very beginning, welcome back. So glad this continues to add value and contribute to your life and your work. And if you're one of the new folks to the podcast, it continues to grow, spread all over the place. Welcome. So glad you're here. Hope you'll go back and listen to old episodes. So many great topics, so many great little nuggets and micropods, and also great conversations with thought leaders from around across the country and around the world. So hope you'll join in and do that. As always, my promise to you is this is a place for you to step back, for you to think, hopefully for some good oxygen to be breathed into you as you think about the temperature that you're trying to set in your life and your work. So glad that you are here. Before we dive into today's episode, if you'll do me the quick favor, if you will, of course, stop and rate the podcast 5 stars, of course. Again, this is how the algorithms work. So hopefully you are having a great experience with the podcast. I hope you'll rate the podcast as a whole. I hope you'll rate individual episodes. Every time you do that, it helps. If you leave an authentic review, your own words on whatever platform you're listening to, and just saying, hey, this is what I think, this is what it has resonated with me, that helps other people find the podcast. And of course, every time you invite somebody else, share it within your colleagues or your network, share different topics with people, say, hey, we ought to talk about this at work or think about this on our team. That's how it spreads. If you share it on social media, all of those ways help amplify these messages further out into the world. And so thank you for everyone that does that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So from the beginning today, for today's episode, let's do a quick little rinse and repeat again, just for some terminology. Again, if you're somebody who's been listening to the podcast forever, then this is going to be really familiar language to you. But if you're new, let me just kind of rinse and repeat as we're talking about cultural fitness, and not just fit today, but to talk about the word culture, I want to make sure, again, that we remember that culture is dynamic, which means it's always changing. It's not static. It's always evolving. It's growing. It's changing. And it's shaped moment by moment every single day by the way we think, act, and interact. And every person, we all are sharing in the creation of culture by the way we think, the way that we show up and think about whatever it is we're here to create and be a part of together, what our role might be, our own individual actions, how we show up and the behaviors that we put into the world, and how we interact, how we do what we do. And all of that is helping to shape the cultural ecosystem that we are a part of and helps create the culture. Again, it could be without judgment, but it could be in healthy or unhealthy ways. Cultures are always growing and changing, and some are growing and changing in healthy and good ways, and others maybe in what you would deem as unhealthy and not so good ways. But that's all being shaped by the way we think, act, and interact. And in a past episode, you might have recognized, if you didn't listen to this episode, I encourage you to go back and listen to it, where I talked about cultural dissonance. Cultural dissonance. Cultural dissonance is when our actions and our behaviors don't align with the culture that we say we want to create into the future. So, on today's podcast, we're talking about adopting the mindset as leaders, teams, and organizations for cultural fitness, not just hiring for quote-unquote cultural fit, but the most effective cultures are attracting, retaining, and developing talent that adds to their culture and a commitment to keep working on their cultural fitness beyond just their cultural fit. I'll explain more. But before we dive into today's topic, let's pause, take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
If you haven't done so already, we hope you'll visit Amazon or Amplify or jasonvbarger.com to check out Breathing Oxygen, my new book that is all about breathing good oxygen into ourselves and mindsets that fuel ourselves and the teams and the organizations around us. Positive, healthy thinking is as essential to great leadership and building a winning culture as the air we breathe. Leading yourself and a team of people has never been more complicated than it is today. As a leader, every move you make is either breathing life into your organization or slowly killing it. The atmosphere can easily turn toxic with negativity, blame, and doubt poisoning the culture. Just like every being on the planet needs good air to breathe, every organization needs leadership that breathes life into its people to sustain the energy required to complete its mission. Breathing Oxygen focuses on 6 key leadership mindsets that breathe life into any team: clarity, inclusivity, mental agility, grit, rest, and ownership. Join us, read, and share Breathing Oxygen.
Available now from Amplify Books on Amazon and jasonvbarger.com.
So again, as we dive into this topic around cultural fitness, culture's dynamic, means it's always changing, it's not static, it's always evolving, growing, and changing. And we all together on your team, your organization, however you're thinking about it today, we all play a role in shaping it by the way we think, act, and interact. And every person within a cultural ecosystem helps to create the culture. And cultural dissonance, again, is when our actions and behaviors do not align with the culture that we say we want. And no team, no organization is perfect. There's cultural dissonance that comes up in every culture and every relationship, but being able to identify it and recognize, what actions and behaviors are leading to this dissonance and help us get on track with, what is the temperature that we want to set? What is the culture that we're aiming for into the future to create? So all of this is a backdrop for the fact that in the world, that we're living in right now, where Gallup, research, the Gallup organization, the research they've done tells us that 51% of current employees, 51%, so the majority of current employees are actively looking for a new job or actively watching for job opportunities. That's in research that they've done across industries and across organizations, that right now in the world, they say 51% of all current employees are actively looking for a new job or watching for job opportunities. And employees, in today's world are, they are the consumers of the workplace. The employees are the ones that are deciding, where is it that I want to work? And so negative experiences, toxic cultures, or just stagnant cultures can jeopardize not only the employee experience, but an organization's effectiveness and the overall company brand. And so in an environment where so many people are not happy where they are, not content, and or looking for other places, we have to be thinking about, what is that cultural ecosystem that we are building? What is it we are creating, and how are we creating? It's a massive, as you've heard me talk about in the past, a massive opportunity that culture can become your greatest competitive advantage. Because if people are looking to go someplace else, and we know all the research around people want more meaningful work environments and meaningful work cultures. So if you are in the midst of creating that, all of a sudden you become a more attractive place for people. So there's been a lot of talk over the years, of course, about hiring for quote-unquote cultural fit. hiring around quote-unquote cultural fit. And cultural fit, so if you haven't heard that terminology, or if you have but you just haven't thought about what does it really mean, it's the idea of recruiting talent whose value systems, beliefs, and everyday behaviors align with the hiring organization, with your organization or whatever your company is, in order to kind of help keep the current culture intact. And so this idea of cultural fit, it's a fine idea. It's a fine idea because you want to find people that their values, the beliefs, their everyday behaviors align with the way that your team and organization operates, and certainly are they a good fit. It's a fine idea. But when the idea is focused on keeping the culture intact, then what I would say about it is that it's missing that very important element of culture shaping, which the reality is that culture is dynamic, which means it's always changing. So our aim should not be to keep our cultures intact. Our focus should be on growing our cultures and shaping them in authentic and life-giving ways into the future. So many places, as they hire, have been shifting their mindset from purely cultural fit to thinking about the talent they are recruiting as cultural adds. How are they cultural add-ons? How are they cultural contributors? Do the people you are hiring or recruiting not just fit for some culture that's just staying intact or static, but do they fit and are they aligned with your values, but do they also add or contribute something unique, something diverse, something special to the future culture that you are creating together? Will they help make contributions that will help your culture evolve in an authentic and positive direction? This idea helps expand our thinking and our mindset from this kind of stagnant kind of fit and shifts the focus on growing the ecosystem that's always changing. And so on today's episode, I want to take it even further because, again, I think that's been a good contribution to the dialogue of moving us beyond cultural fit and bringing us into cultural add or cultural contribution. But I think we need to go even further because fit and add are beginnings. They're beginnings, but they are still not bringing a wide enough lens to the conversation. Really, where we need to be also looking is what our plan is for the cultural fitness within our organization. Not just the cultural fit, but the cultural fitness within our organization. We want to move beyond just that initial fit, again, which is an important thing, and do we think the person has something to contribute and to add? But we want to move beyond that into what is our ongoing strategy to have our team or our organization continuously working on its cultural fitness. Not just fit, but the ongoing cultural fitness. So recently, not too long ago, I was at a regional culture summit in Austin, Texas with a company. Shout out to B&N, Burgess and Neipel, and Grady, one of their employees, who I'll talk about here in a second. But I'm at this regional culture summit that we're doing in different regions across the country with this great company. And we're rallying people around their core values and what it means to grow our level of emotional intelligence and servant leadership and things that are tied strategically in their strategic plan to how they want to develop their culture. It's a really, really wonderful thing, and I feel grateful to be a part of it and so excited to really be somebody who's helping to lead that initiative. But as we're in Austin, Texas that day as a part of this regional culture summit, Grady shared with the group about the great Simon Sinek's question that he asks. He saw a video or something of Simon Sinek talking about this idea and this question. Simon posed the question of, when are you actually in shape? When are you actually in shape? And he was referencing people that work out or, are really into fitness. When are you actually in shape? And the point that he made was that for people that are actively working out and working on their strength and their fitness in their personal life, that it's hard for them to pinpoint on a timeline of when they, quote unquote, got in shape. Getting in good physical condition is not something we just achieve, and it's not something, it's not something that just kind of happens. It's a process, and it's something that we continually work on and we develop along the way. And as soon as anybody who's, again, been into their own personal fitness, they know that as soon as you stop and you stop working out, our fitness begins to suffer and how quickly you lose the gains that you once had. So it's with that great imagery that makes me think about the fact that cultural fitness, not just our own personal physical fitness, but cultural fitness within an organization is required for the best teams and organizations on the planet, because culture isn't just stagnant. It isn't something you achieve, and as soon as your team or your organization wins, a Best Places to Work award, it's or something like that, it's not like you're done. You can't just check the culture box and say, okay, we did culture. The best places have the mindset that cultural fitness is something they're always working on. They're continuously striving to set the temperature they desire as thermostat leaders, and know that they need to continue to intentionally breathe oxygen into the culture they are shaping, because culture's dynamic. We have to keep working out in order to stay in shape and condition ourselves for the cultural fitness and the culture that we're trying to create into the future. And you've heard me talk about in the past that what we allow lingers and what we teach triggers. And what we allow, so what are those behaviors or actions or operations that are counter to the culture that we want? And what are those behaviors or those operations or those habits that we continue to linger that we need to be aware of so that we can teach a different habit or behavior or operation to trigger a new positive chain reaction? What are those things we need to cut out of our diet, if we carry that metaphor further, so that we can continue to work on our cultural fitness? What are the exercises we need to do to continue to trigger the kind of fitness that we want in our organization? So it makes me think about 4 quick areas. I mean, certainly there are more than just these 4 areas that are part of cultural fitness across a team or organization. But if you want a couple of questions just to stimulate your thinking to begin for today, here are 4 areas and some questions to ponder. As it relates to onboarding of new people into your culture and into your ecosystem. Once they're hired, how do you view the process to begin to help new employees not just know about the culture, but begin to work out and help the culture develop? So what are you doing as it relates to onboarding? At the local team level, whether that's a local team that might, different parts of the company might be spread out around the country or the world, what are you specifically and intentionally doing to breathe oxygen into your leadership team or your department or your local team to help work on their cultural fitness? And for emerging leaders throughout the organization, what are you doing to help identify and help emerging leaders work on their cultural fitness for the future health of the organization? I just recently did a podcast all focused on emerging leaders, but what are you doing to help their cultural fitness? And lastly, at the full company or organization level, how are you helping all the people, all hands within your organization work out and help contribute to their own personal fitness and the cultural fitness of the entire organization? What are you intentionally doing to help people work out? So I hope today's episode got you thinking in many new ways. If a deeper dive into any of these topics is interesting to you, please reach out to us on email, info@jasonvbarger.com, and let us know. We're going to continue or if you have questions or anything like that, we're going to continue to design content to help meet you where you are. Lastly, I hope you go back and listen to a number of these past episodes and really hope that they add value to you along your way. Cheers to the path ahead of us, and remember that the future of leadership is you, it's me, it's us. We need to get clear on the temperature we hope to set, and then be courageous and committed to breathing oxygen into the mindsets and actions that will sustain our path forward. Step back, remember, be a thermostat, and breathe good oxygen.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.